everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of the Bao Podcast. Today I'm with a new guest, Jona Michiels. Jona is innovation manager at the well-known construction company Groep Van Roey. With 11 companies in this group, they are a specialist in total solutions for the construction industry. They develop projects from start to finish. On top of this, they are probably also one of the oldest companies in Belgium. Groep Van Roey was founded in 1760, which makes them 281 years old. I'm very curious to hear more about this fascinating business and its activities. Welcome, Jona. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Yes, thank you for joining us. It's nice that you were able to make some time.
It's my pleasure and also my very first podcast, so
that's fine. Now it's gonna be a little bit awkward to hear yourself speak,
yes.
But in, I would say, 10 to 15 minutes, you're completely used to it.
Perfect.
All right, so you are one of the innovation managers at Van Roey, right?
I am the only one.
The only one, okay.
I sometimes call myself a one-man army.
Yes, because Van Roey is quite an army, right? How many people are working there?
It's about 900 people working. It's about 400 million turnover, if you include all companies.
All 11.
Yes. So it's just on the innovation. It's just me as a full time, but of course I have my manager who also spends let's say half of his time in the innovative areas in the company.
How did you end up in this position?
I started working at Van Roey in 2014 when I left university. So I first started there on the tendering division, specialized very fast in DBFMOs. So those are the types of procurement where we not only build it, the structure, but also coordinate the design, do the maintenance, do the finance as well, and in some cases some operational elements of the building itself. And I've always had like a very familiarity or a heart for sustainability, let's call it that. I also did my thesis on the sustainability of buildings and what the impact of energy is, but also materials of newly built homes. And so what we saw is that right now there's a lot happening in the market. So we are middle in the transition towards a more digitalized world. So it's called Industry 4.0. But also sustainability is becoming a real topic, and the search for sustainable business models as well. And so we saw a lot of things happening, affordable housing as well, a lot of things happening in the market, and we said, okay, we are a very decentralized organization, so all the different companies really have a lot of saying in their own way and in their own business. And so innovation was very ad hoc, just some people being like, yeah, I have this idea, and then that would happen in one of the companies, but it wasn't really structured on the holding level. And so at the end of 2018 they decided we need to like structure it more on the holding level, and we'll have to look to more synergies between the companies, as well as the very first 4 years I tried to combine an operation job with a strategic one, and you always have the deadlines of the operation, which are more important than looking long term. So in my opinion, if you really want to have a very good and clear strategic roadmap of a very complex group like Van Roey, you need someone who has a full-time position in just looking at innovation and the future. Otherwise, you always end up going for that one tender or that one new deadline and kind of forget about the future. So that's why the position was created in the end of 2018. And yeah, here I am now.
Okay, cool. Is it so? There are basically 1.5 FTEs who are focused within a company of 900 people.
Yeah,
to determine the strategic direction.
Yes and no.
Okay.
So we often say that there are a lot of more people working on innovation because in all the different building business units, you also have people working on innovation, but it's more in the focus of their own business model. So, for instance, at our developer, there's also someone who is really looking at more innovation and new products in the development phase, but only on development. And so I will help them with the knowledge of the group. And there's the same is happening in the construction firms. But so I would say that, let's call it 10 FTEs if we all add it up.
Right.
I think, actually don't really know that well, but a lot of people are working on innovative concepts, but on the holding level, it's only 1.5 FTEs. But we are still very successful as a group. And I think that the decentralized way that we are organized is part of our success. Simply because every business unit really has feeling with their own market, with what the customers want, and so that's a benefit. A downside is that it's very ad hoc because every business is doing their own thing and trying to learn from each other. That's another expertise.
Mm-hmm. So you've been doing it for 3 years now, give or take?
Yes.
What are like the biggest things you have noticed or the most important elements you have learned in that period? Is there something you can share with our audience and of what you learned throughout the last couple of years in innovation and in the construction industry, and maybe more specifically, how do you get it implemented in this behemoth of 900 people and
mm-hmm.
$500 million turnover?
I would say it's all about people. That's what I really learned. So when I started, I was like, oh, it's about different materials using or different concepts, just like bio, or different techniques. But it's not about technology. It's also not about business models. It is about the finance. But if you really want to make change, it's more about change management, especially in a bigger group where you already have processes, people have their focus, their operational tasks. And then there I am saying like, hey, I know what you're doing, but do you know you can do it another way? It's just not 100% clear yet, but do you want to research it with me together? Mm-hmm. I thought everyone would be like, yeah, let's do that. That doesn't happen like that. So especially in a big group where you have, where everyone already has their processes, it's really more about internal networking and really convincing people that a certain proposition has value for their own business, and then they will become your ambassador. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's also because it's very decentralized, because we don't have, it's not that I have this one mandate of the CEO, you now have to do this. That's not how you work. I also don't think that that's how you need to do innovation in a big company, because you need to have ownership of people who are really committed to doing it themselves. It's all about people.
Mm-hmm. And the Van Roey has been existed now for 281 years, right?
Yeah, so they say.
Yeah. Okay. So
that came out wrong.
Okay.
I was lost in transition. No, it's just, it's funny to say so, because I've only been there for 7 years, and 7 in comparison to 281 is just...
Yes, indeed. But do you think there is a specific, like after the 7 years that you've been working there now, is there a specific reason why they have survived for this long? How, like, what's part of their organizational DNA that enabled them to thrive for 280 years?
So our baseline is building with people, and I think that's one of the successes. simply because it's not some top-down management deciding what you need to do. It's always been about empowerment, and that's also what I've really felt when I started there. It's empowerment of people, and what's also very important, it's still 100% family-owned business. So it's still 100% the family of Van Roey, and you feel less as in a very big corporate, the very push on every quarter to have your results. Of course, we need to still be profitable, otherwise there is no business model and there is no company. But the long-term vision, as well as the sustainable or more corporate sustainability, is really in their DNA. You can really feel that the company in itself is not only about making money. Of course it is, every private company is, but they also want to make an added change to society in a beneficial way by taking care of their own employees, but also trying in the scheme of things and in the boundaries of the market to have more innovative products which have less CO2 and stuff like that. So it's something you really feel. It's not something on a PowerPoint. That's something, a long-term division or a long-term vision. Basically, we still want to exist in the next 280 years. Then all of us will be dead. But the company will still remain that way. And I think the only way you can do that is if you allow yourself to look at the long term, not just the short-term maximal profits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds very logical if you say it that way, but I think a lot of organizations try to do that this way, or try to empower their people and try to continue to exist. But yeah, I think I once read it, like 1 in a million businesses or something live longer than 100 years.
1 in a million.
I thought, yeah. I don't know, Marty. Can you Google it?
Is this your Google man?
This is our
Google man. Please tell me.
Yes, or the Joe Rogan. How does it called? I would say it 1,000 times. Young Jamie. Young Jamie. Yeah. How many businesses exist longer than 100 years? I thought it was something crazy, like 1 in a million or something, but I could be wrong. Anyway, I think it's easy to say in theory, but
yeah.
what really enables it to do it in practice with such a big organization? Because it is really, I think it's really, really fascinating.
Yeah, so in all transparency and honesty, 100 years ago, Van Roey was a smaller company. It was only one company, not 11. But I think you have this saying of the very first generation of entrepreneur. He built something, the second one wants to maintain it, and the third one ruins it. And that's basically what they say, because they sell it, or they don't really feel any of the reason, the DNA of the beginning. That's something that is being said. We now are in the preparation of our generation, our next generation in the family-owned company, and it will be the 9th generation. And so we hope that no one is ever going to ruin it, because it's also always been the family and the family values that they want to give a good company and a healthy company to the next generation. So I hope this, I think it will happen that way, that this generation will also say, like, I want to pass this on to my children as well. So that way you can really prolong the long-term vision. It's true that it's not the common cause anymore. I think in our economy today, it's all about profits. And if the company only exists for 20 years, but the owners are very wealthy, so be it. And I'm glad to work for a company that still is more traditional in that way, that they want to do it for the long term, and not only for profits, but also really still feel that they can make a change in the society, in society as well.
And the family themselves, they are no longer actively managing the business.
No. So there are other companies, just as Wilman and Cordeel, where you still have the family in itself. That's still the CEO. We do not have that. That's being there are very clear rules on that, or that they said that, okay, because it's now 3 divisions of the family, and it's not that one of them really said like, I want to be the CEO. They're still very actively involved in the board of directors, so they still have a very good feeling of what the company is doing. But in the operational follow-up, they made the choice to stand back and put in place like a CEO of the company itself.
Mm-hmm. And that's been for a while?
Yeah, I think it has been like that since the beginning of the 90s. Also, It's something that they told me because I myself was born in the beginning of the 90s, so I wasn't there. I wasn't there. In all honesty, we also it's not always been the way it is today. I think that it was at the end of the 90s, Van Roey was almost bankrupt, because we made
that was with Frankie?
Frankie, yeah. It was an acquisition of Frankie, which was very internationally active, but it was very hard to manage, and a lot of equity from Van Roey was being put inside of Frankie, but it still went bankrupt, and it almost dragged Van Roey with it. Thank God that it didn't.
Yeah, for sure. Or you wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah. Or for maybe for another company, who knows.
This is true. Could you find something? 0.5%.
5%.
Oh, okay. So it's way more than 500,000. It's 0.5%, basically.
Yeah.
So 1 in 200.
It's 5 in 1,000.
Yes. And then how many 285 years old? Yeah, I'm really intrigued. I think I once read this, like the oldest business is like from the 1600s or something. No, it was something from a Japanese business.
Yeah.
Say it again?
It doesn't exist anymore since last year.
Okay. Oh, damn.
But it's also, I think, kind of the way you put it, right? Because I think that on Stella they say that it's been there from 1665. I don't know. In Stella you can see it as well.
1860 something. Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
but that's the same thing. I don't know that the legal entity of Van Roey is 280 years old. It's now the 9th generation of entrepreneurs. It's always been called Van Roey. It used to be, this is a word I cannot translate to English. Een schrijnwerkerij.
A carpenter.
A carpenter?
Carpenter.
Ah, okay.
Or a wood shop.
A wood shop. I would say a wood shop. Yeah. Because the very first thing that we found in the records is we built the furniture of the church in Rijkenvorsel, the village where the company is founded. And so we saw that generation after generation, they still had the wood shop. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it was very hard to find any tracks, so there are some on darker spots. But you can still see that the entrepreneurial spirit was there. And so yeah, it's true. I mean, we're older than the Belgian state.
What did you find?
So the oldest company ever.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the oldest company ever, 500, not 1,000, 500.
78.
It stopped in 2006. It was a hotel in Japan, in Osaka.
1,500 years old. Jesus. Okay, that's crazy. All right, so if you want to get the world record, you still have quite a while to go.
Okay, I would say challenge accepted.
Yeah. So you were talking about sustainability and how you can implement, for example, as you were saying, you're going through a transition, more digital, more sustainable, and it's basically your job to bring that into the organization.
Yes. So I have, it's basically 2 focuses. So I'm really looking in the market, looking at what markets are forming. One of the clear things that we can see is a push towards sustainability. The Green Deal is there. managing our own CO2 is going to be one of the major topics that's being pushed by legislation. Something different that we can see very clearly is the energy market is transitioning from a very centralized one to a decentralized one. So decentralized means of producing and storing electricity is becoming the new normal. And since we build like larger neighborhoods, that's becoming so. Energy was never a part of the building environment because you would just buy electricity and it would magically appear. And now it's going to be more a smart grid where you try to produce and storage all the electricity that you need. And so we see that this new market is forming and that we are very good positioned to enter that market. And so that's one of the things I see I have to do. That's part of my job is looking inside the market, looking at legislation. We also see a push towards circular economy from legislation as well. So if that's one of the things I really do is try to look outside and see what markets are forming and is it becoming a threat for us, or is it a very good opportunity to move into that market? And the next part will be if we say, for instance, this energy market is becoming very interesting for us, then we will try to really look into detail what part is interesting for us. Is it so interesting that we want to do it ourselves, or are we going to work with a partner? If we're going to do it ourselves, then we need to research it. And so we in the past and still doing today a lot of applied research projects from Interreg. We just recently got an Horizon 2020 program as well. We're part of the consortium, an Econ from Vlaio. So there are different state initiatives on the European level or a Belgian level or Flemish level that supply some financial means to do applied research. And we try to research it really with the end goal in mind to form a product or a proposition that we as a company can use and place inside the market. So if that research is being successful, then it's my job to try to implement it in the businesses today, in the processes that exist today. So that's kind of the flow. It really depends. So I would say that my mandate is to spend at least 60% of my time trying to really go into depth what's interesting for us within this and the next 5 years. And let's say that 20 until 40% is trying to implement it and get proof points, get pilot cases, because that's something that I've learned in the construction sector as well. I haven't worked in another sector, so I don't know if it's in every sector, but it needs to be concrete. Simply a PowerPoint telling you this is going to happen, it's not enough. It's really not enough. They need to see. We noticed
this as well.
Yes. Yeah. You need to see it, you need to touch it, you need to feel it. And one time, okay, but I prefer 2 or 3 cases so that I'm very, very sure that I don't take too many risks.
I've told this before here on the podcast, but that's the story that we've been going through. Like, we started with an idea. We had a presentation from university. I tried to sell it based on the presentation because I read you can do that, but not in construction, and maybe
not in construction.
Maybe in the American construction market, but not in the Flemish construction market.
No.
So then you hear, okay, but build it first. So then we build a prototype, right, at Van Hout. And then people came, but then they said, okay, but this is a prototype.
This is not a real thing.
This is not a real thing. So build it now in real life. All right. So then we did like small projects, and then they say, okay, but this is one project. So now do it bigger. And then every single time it's like, and yeah, it's probably normal, but I do think, as you mentioned, that in the construction industry, it's a really risk-averse industry, and especially in Flanders. And it's understandable because it's always about a lot of money. If it's about a SaaS business and it costs €20 a month to test it, then the hurdle is way lower. If something goes wrong in an apartment or in a construction process, it's always going to be at least a couple of €1,000 to fix it in the best case, or if it's a structural problem, worst case, a couple of €100,000.
Yeah.
So it's understandable, but I do think I'm sometimes wondering, and I'm curious about your opinion on this. If you see the challenges and the legal goals that are now being formed from Europe and from the governmental level, if all the innovation that needs to happen to achieve them needs to go through this type of trajectory, I'm highly skeptical.
Yeah, so I feel you because I face the same I would say opportunities. Difficulties. It is very difficult to, and this is one of my sometimes biggest frustration. I try not to be frustrated in my job, but sometimes I can really be frustrated at the slow speed that everything is happening. I've made peace with the fact that is the maximum speed in this industry, and I cannot, on my individual level, change that. And it's my choice to still stand up every morning and do the same job. So it is what it is. I would say it is challenging. So what I can really feel in my experience as well is it really depends on the view of the end user or one of the stakeholders. So everyone knows that legislation is coming. I think that every European, so the translation of European legislation into national legislation, always in Belgium at least, I don't know how it is in other countries, but here it always takes much longer than needed. So let's say that there has been a directive for the smart grid, and so this basically means that people can become a producer of electricity as well and trade electricity. And I think that Belgium needed to implement this in legislation in the January of 2020, and it's still not here. Also, it's difficult. We have 4 ministers of energy, I think. So part of it is Flemish, part of it is Belgian. So that's a political question. And so what I do feel is that there is some skeptical view as well as, okay, there is coming to be a push, but it's a slow push. It will not be a hard push from one year to the next one. And so sometimes I hear like, my business plan still works. So until I get forced to do it differently, okay, it's true. I kind of know where we're going to go. But if it happens in 5 years, then I will act in 5 years. And this is in a broad ecosystem of construction, not only talking or not specifically talking about Van Roey. And I don't know, it's difficult because if you look at successful startups or successful businesses, the biggest parameter that decided if it's successful or not is timing. So we all know YouTube, but the principle or the idea of YouTube existed before YouTube. But the internet was too slow because nobody wanted to wait to see a video. And so timing is very, very important about if it comes to innovation. And you always have the very strategical choice. Do you want to be a first mover or a smart follower? And both theories are good and bad in the same time. So what I try to do is where we can really make our own difference, and that will translate in added value, wherein we will win more tenders, for instance, because we can say, circular economy, we already have 4 years of experience, the rest doesn't. So that's an added value, right? Very commercial value. So if you really look at your own clients, and for Van Roey, the public tenders is more than 50% of our turnover. So what local legislation finds important is important for us. That's why we are investing in a research about circular economy since 2017, simply because we know and feel that our clients are finding it more and more important. We also did a lot of research in 3D printing. And 3D printing is going to be disruptive in some fields of construction, not all of them, but some, especially I think in precast solutions with architectural value. But in all honesty, so we have a division of structural concrete and of architectural concrete. But in the whole market of prefab concrete, we are not that big. So we're not going to take the market if we invest a lot of means in 3D printing, because we don't have the operation to really take that market. Mm-hmm. So it's a very normal choice that we made there, that is we want to be a smart follower. So we still do very small projects on 3D printing, and just to follow the technology and really get a feeling when the timing is right. But we will not be the very first precast company that invests in a 3D printer, but we will be the second or the third.
Mm-hmm. But that's also something, as you mentioned, that I also studied innovation at university. It was my manama, innovation entrepreneurship, and that's also something where you can see that. I think, again, I'm not sure about the exact figures, but if I remember correctly, the second mover is usually the one who takes the market.
Yes.
And the best example, I think, in the last couple of decades that who's doing this is Apple. Mm-hmm. They've been always not the one who really. No, but I mean, the touchscreen technology existed.
Yeah, of course. But what I wanted to say is the very first computer was of Apple, and Microsoft copied it.
No, but Apple copied it from Xerox, which was a research lab in Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. So if you really talk about inventing the technology, mm-hmm. what I learned is that they are the example of always doing it right behind the invention has been done. Mm-hmm. They see when the timing is right, and then they are the kings of combining it at the right moment into that one revolutionary product. Yeah. While you were explaining this, I was just thinking about, okay, but will this ever happen in the construction market? Right? I think based upon my little experience now after these 3 years of being commercially active with this product, I do need to agree with your previous statement in the sense that I think legislation has a above average input on how the market evolves in comparison with other markets, to my opinion. Because if you look, for example, at technology, more Silicon Valley type of businesses of software, I think the presence of a competitor can go way quicker. Mm-hmm. Because just of the scalability of software, or the scalability of building technological, like phones and maybe smart technology products. But to really compete in the construction market, you need to build up a huge production facility, and that just takes time.
Yeah. So I think...
and sorry, to finish, best example, Catera for me.
Yeah.
The big American company, couple of billion thrown in there. They were building all these factories, but still didn't manage. Mm-hmm. Didn't manage.
Yeah, exactly. So I think so McKinsey had a report about the construction sector as well on a global scale, and they kind of said what you're saying very, very clearly. So the ecosystem of the construction sector is the biggest of all. So I think it's about 13% of the GDP. 13%.
Okay.
Of the GDP.
Global GDP.
Global GDP is construction sector, and I think it's 9% of all labor or 7% of all labor. And so it's the top. I think the reason why it is the top is because it's one of the only or one of the last industrial sectors where you still have a very decentralized ecosystem. So what we see in automotive, but in the boating industry as well as the manufacturing of planes or software, it's all scalable because they really, the ecosystem, the way they build cars in the very beginning or boats in the very beginning, really looks like the way we build buildings today in the process. Like every part is a new prototype. There's not enough standardization. We still build exactly what the customer wants, and we don't really approach it as a product. So all those means, if you really look at a product as a product and only innovate on that product, like the way we do with cars, you still buy a car today for the same price compared to your welfare 30 years ago, but you get more car simply because they innovated, they standardized. I mean, basically all cars are pretty much the same right now. They look different, but everything under the hood for the entire VW group, it's the same. It's pretty much the same.
But like even the vans from like the big European, they're all built on the same
same
things. One factory somewhere in East Europe.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's obviously they do it like that. It's more efficient. And still every building you enter is a complete unique building. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing because a car only exists in our landscape for 10 years, 5 years, and a building for 100 if we're lucky. And so it is a difficult ecosystem where still you have a client who wants something, you have a construction firm that will be very commercial and say like, I can build the very specific thing that you want. And nobody really says, nah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to build it my way, and that way it will be cheaper. That's not really the proposition right now in construction. You also have the architect who has a very clear vision and kind of wants every building to be unique as well. And you still have all your designers for the techniques and for structure, stuff like that. And you have a very big ecosystem, and every stakeholder has a saying. So if you want to introduce a new system, for example, a bio-living, I don't know, or another material, let's say we build with wood instead of concrete, all of those entities have a voice. And if one of them says like, I don't like this, it's not gonna happen. It's even been that hard that we, at the very beginning, I tried to really push more innovative ways of building walls, not load-bearing walls with Jona system and stuff like that, and other competitors of Jona or other type of propositions. And I had a case where the client was convinced, but also the architect, the designers, we as well. We wanted to invest in it. And you know where it went wrong? Our subcontractor. Because we, of course, subcontracted it to the lowest price and also a party that we know. And they said, I don't believe in this system. I have my own system. The way my people work is a way that I know. So I'm not going to take a risk because you've already contracted the normal way of building to me. I'm not going to do it differently. And so that's how hard sometimes innovation can be, and how you really have to manage all stakeholders, because otherwise it doesn't fly. It just doesn't fly. And I don't think you have this complexity of an ecosystem of decision makers anywhere else in the very big manufacturing sectors.
Yeah, I can only fully agree. We experienced it recently. Someone completely out of the blue, no idea. We had no idea, and yeah,
it surprised us all.
Yeah, like
it's true.
But how can you solve that? Because if I was thinking about it while you were saying it, I think the only thing that I can come up with that you can prevent those kind of things is to go more vertical in integration.
It's true.
Like what you're seeing now in automotive, right? The entire industry was built on completely putting it all at the subcontractor level, just getting it all just in time delivered at the manufacturing side and put it all together. And then this crazy dude in Silicon Valley starts making electric cars, and he wants to do it as much as possible on site, own supplies, own production, everything in-house. Is it then only a matter of time until like a big player in the construction market starts doing it that way and starts eating a lot of market share all of a sudden? Is that the way you should go? Because I think, again, that's what, for example, Catera tried, and they also horribly failed.
Yeah. So what you're describing is the black swan theory, right? So Musk, Musk was a black swan through the sector of automotive. He really made a big disruption. Corona was also a black swan because it really was unexpected for everyone, and it messed up the entire supply chain, and now all prices are really rising through the roof. And so I think one of it's one of the challenges for the construction sector, simply because it's so decentralized. Catera could have been a black swan, but not to us. So why would we? They cannot take our market simply because we know the market here. They don't have any production here. Maybe some of the bigger players around the factory really got scared. And so what you're describing is already a very centralized market where you have these very big automotive groups, and then you have one disruptive player. And they are challenged simply because of the scalability of the market. Tesla could really take a share. That's the same thing that Apple did with the touchscreen technology of a smartphone. They just came out of the blue and kind of pushed everyone away, and nobody knows who Nokia is anymore, basically. But that was only a threat simply because it was such a global and scalable market, and the construction sector is not. If somewhere in Asia they have a very industrialized way of building, they're not going to import it here in the next 10 years, probably. We're not going to feel it directly. And so the inertia that you have right now, because it's such a decentralized ecosystem, and because let's be honest, you mentioned we're a big group, 11 companies, it's 400 million. That's only Flemish and Brussels, right? So we have our own market, and we feel the market, and right now there's not a Catera next door that can really hurt us. Mm-hmm. So it's still a very interesting way of approaching the market, and I do think that in the next 30 years we will see more Cateras, and we will see more ways of standardized and precasted houses, simply because it's so decentralized and everything is a prototype. We have no proficiencies. Basically, if our materials rise, so will our price of the end product. Simply because I can say it differently, like in the all of the European Union, the rise in productivity has only been worse in one sector, just one sector in the entire European Union, and that is fishery. And all others, if you look at manufacturing, it's always 3-4%. The average in the European Union, the last 20 years, is 0.5%. So we're still doing everything very inefficiently, and that's a problem because the prices just keep coming up. Where I said that you can buy a car today for the same share of your welfare as 30 years ago, that's not the same with buildings. Buildings just keep on getting more expensive. And so affordable housing, together with the fact that it's not only because the structure is more expensive, but also the ground to build upon is becoming more and more rare, and so prices go up. So affordable housing is a really big challenge in the whole Western world, because you see that in America, you see that in Europe, and it's in all cities. Basically, starters like us have difficulties buying property, and this is becoming a very big problem. And the way that we build buildings today is not going to be part of that solution. Mm-hmm. We need to turn that around. But I said this in 30 years. for a reason, because it's not going to happen in the next 5. It's going to be a very small push and slow push.
What about the idea or the concept? It's something I read after the entire Catera debacle, or when it imploded. There were voices coming up, and I already heard it. People talk about it more and more about scaling PropTech on the existing infrastructure base. So, for example, like. Yeah, to talk a bit about my own shop, right? We have standardized elements which we can combine into a SAM module, which is adaptable enough to fit in a lot of different apartments, but it can get produced on the existing infrastructure. And the article was speaking about if there is going to be a disruptor, it's probably more going to be on those type of models. I'm not saying it's going to be us for all. I mean, we're trying, but that
I understand what you're saying. What really now comes into my mind is Northvolt. I don't know if you know it.
There are a lot of big funded companies now that are, I don't know this one, but there are a lot of big players getting funded now. Yeah.
But so basically what that is, it has been a push from Energy, which is funded by the European Union to really look at the transition towards the sustainable energy grids. And what they said is like, basically, right now we don't have any manufacturers of batteries, lithium batteries in the European Union, and that's becoming a strategical problem. And what they did, and it was also a push of people coming from America and doing it here in Europe, where they used all existing methods and try to, with only few changes, really use the ecosystem and the processes that exist today to make batteries. And so the factory will open, I think, next year in Sweden, and the entire value chain, or the biggest part, don't know the exact details, will be European. And the only reason, because I think that the project really got launched 2 years ago, 3 years ago, is simply because they really looked at all the components that they need in the batteries. And instead of saying like, I want you to build it like this, they said like, what machinery do you have? What processes are here? And can I make a battery from that? And they even go so far as to mine lithium somewhere in the mountains of Germany, which is very, very deep. And so they will subtract the heat as well, make energy from that to make it more sustainable. And so and that, for me, it's exactly what you just said. It was a very like fresh way of looking, instead of I have this very new concept and now I have to find 100 million euros to build a very big factory and do it still my own way.
Yeah, and that's also what the article was mentioning. Like, restraints create innovation. If you can get your billions in Silicon Valley to build your factories, no one is going to come up with the idea of like, wait, we have an existing production infrastructure. Why don't we just, by looking at it from another way and just combining the things that are, but combining them in an innovative new way, we can make the entire process more efficient, and we can even produce it on the existing infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how you're going to scale very fast.
Yes.
And so as a good example, I think is Skillpod, which is another scale-up that we have a participation in, because they really look at prefabricated housing just as the way that you would make a car. Right now, they still do everything in their own factory, simply because that's kind of the scale they needed. But now, simply because they don't have enough room and the demand from the market is much bigger than that they can produce, they are they are forced to look for existing factories in the big neighborhood. To really see like, but you can make my walls more efficiently than I'm doing right now on your existing portfolio, basically. And I really think that's that's gonna be one of the solutions. Absolutely, I really believe in that.
I think so as well. Then if you think ahead of it, of course, then the main question is going to be which one is going to go quickest, the centrally controlled by one business designs, or if we're going to open source the entire thing.
Open source, most definitely. Yeah.
I don't know. It's a fun. Anyway, Jona, I'm looking at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's already been almost an hour.
Okay.
So are you still annoyed by hearing your own voice?
No. It
Told
really
you, right?
does disappear.
10 to 15 minutes. Let's maybe end with a couple of Lilac questions. If you had to do a job that has nothing to do with construction,
Oof.
any idea?
Oof. Kind of get me off guard with that one. So let's say, okay, tomorrow I'll make a complete new change. The very first thing I will probably do is travel for like half a year, because I really like traveling. Mm-hmm. I've never done a very long travel. I would choose from one or two options, which is trying to still get in the ecosystem, because I really like the ecosystem of disruptive new startups. So that's something outside of the construction sector that's still there's still a lot of possibilities, especially in digitalization. But if we're gonna do it completely different, why not? I don't know. I can found my own dancing school, or I can go work somewhere at with some valuable some youth. Maybe no commercial at all. Just go for a non-profit. I don't know. Sometimes I do wish that I can clone myself into like 10 Jonas and have completely different lives, and I would enjoy every choice I would make in all those 10 versions of me. But I only have one, just one life.
True.
So choosing is losing probably.
What's that phrase again? I once read it like this writer who mentioned like sometimes the agony of the lives I haven't lived are paining me more than the actual life I'm living, or something like that.
Yeah.
Like all these potential routes you could have went and the experiences you could have had. And
true, but it's true what he says, but I think that's a choice as well. I will never. I try, because it's a downfall. I try not to linger on the past and choices that I didn't make, simply because the only real happiness that you can feel is in the moment right now. And if you're looking at the past, it's not happening. If you're looking at the future, also not, because you'll just be struck with, there are so many options, while life is just happening right now.
Have you ever read Eckhart Tolle?
No.
That's what you just mentioned, like living in the now.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a guy, it's a German guy, and he's like one of the big modern age spiritual teachers.
Mm-hmm.
He was like completely depressed a couple of decades ago. And he was like getting to the point of like suicide. And all of a sudden he was sitting somewhere on a bench in a park, and he realized, wait, I cannot live with myself. And then he stopped and he thought again, wait, I cannot live with myself, but that in that sentence, it means that there are two me's.
Yeah.
I cannot live with myself. There is only I. Like, who is this other one? And then he had some kind of spiritual awakening, and now he has written like a couple of books, and I've read one of them, and it's all about like living in the now.
Yeah.
It's really powerful stuff.
Yeah, and probably about the you do have two entities, right?
There's always a voice going on in your head, which is distracting you to go back into the past or to think about the future, and it's preventing you of living into the now. Yeah. But we had this mental thing of like, there's a voice and there's me. No. There's only you.
Yeah.
And if the moment you realize it, that's when
it's true.
Could have like a whoa.
You are not your inside
voices.
You're not your thoughts. Your thoughts are just a part of you. Indeed. And you can always choose what to do with those thoughts.
Yeah, that's easier said than done, though.
It's true. It's my own struggle. I can, amen.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever tried to sit like still for an hour and don't do anything.
An hour? I did it for, I think my maximum would have been 10, 15 minutes. I tried some meditation in the very first lockdown. It was a medium success. I do like the idea that you can spot when you are really thinking and get outside of those train of thoughts. But my means of doing so is not sitting still for an hour. Not yet. Not yet.
No, there are different ways of achieving that state. Of course.
Yes.
I've been experimenting with that stuff for almost a decade now. And last year I went to like a silent retreat in the Ardennes.
Oof. Yes.
Wow.
So how long?
2 days.
2 days.
And I was it's other conversation, but it's a crazy experience. And I have some friends now who are going to do it for 10 days.
Yeah. So when I was in Colombia, I met a girl who did that in Peru or in Ecuador, I forgot, and she just returned. And what she said was that the very first days, the 4 days, were awful. And on the 6th day, she had like a very awakening, where she felt this internal energy, and she could only describe it as taking a different kind of drugs, because she was so ecstatic and so joyous in life, while she was only listening to her own body. And
it's crazy.
Yeah.
I've one of my best friends from Mol. He went on a global travel with his girlfriend, I would say a decade ago, and they went to Myanmar, and they did it 10 days silent retreat. Split up, so she with the girls, he with the men, or women and men. And I swear to God, they came back and they walked back into Verzet, our favorite bar in Mol. And everyone was like,
they
changed.
Yeah.
And up to this date, I see the guy once every couple of months, and when we get back together with the old group, and it's permanent. There's something, and he also says it, it's like, ever since I did those 10 days, something permanently changed, and I think they went to a better, like the decisions they made afterwards led them to a better destination than as where they were heading towards.
I would phrase it as if you do those spiritual thoughts, you get closer to yourself, and you kind of, because a lot of things and choices that you have, thoughts that you have, are imprinted there because of societal values, stuff like that. And really identifying what's yours and what's being put there by someone else or something else, that if you see that more clearly, you do find more closure with yourself, and that's what changes, because you get closer to your own self and your pure self, and that's I think where the big changes happen. I do think that everyone who has a very major impact is very close to their self and their own energy and their own focus.
Yeah, for sure.
Otherwise, it's only distraction.
Yeah, and it's only because really prolonged focus on one specific thing achieves anything.
True.
And in order to be able to do that, you must be able to guide your attention towards a certain thing.
I must say that being a millennial, that's probably my biggest personal struggle in my job right now, simply because we as millennials, we really want to be part of the change, but the change needs to be fast. So Simon Sinek has very beautiful TED Talks about it. And what he says is true. Basically, if there is not enough change after 1 year, you have the idea or the impression, I need to go. Because basically, I cannot make any difference here. But real change is never been made in 1 year. You have the real change is if you focused and you keep focused for many years with a lot of dedication, and that's where the real change happens. And I think we millennials, maybe I speak too much about we and making it too big, but at least for me, that has been a very big challenge, as in really being, this is the pace that it takes, and that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
And the big difference, and it's sometimes it's very good looking back, because we made a lot of difference in those 3 years, but in the moment itself, it always feels as way too slow. Way too slow.
I don't know who said it. One of those big innovators, I think, was Bill Gates. He's like, people constantly overestimate what they can get done on 1 year and dramatically underestimate what they can get done in 10 years.
Yeah.
And everyone does that because it's so difficult for anyone to choose that one thing they want to work on and focus on it for 10 years. Focused and not like burning yourself out and working 80, 90, 100 hours a week, but like the solid work 10 years in a row on that same problem or thing. It's very rare. It's maybe the rarest thing that there is.
Yeah, it's true, but I follow you 100%. That's true. No one talks about in the next 10 years. Also, the idea is frightening to me, doing 10 years the same thing and being focused. That's my own struggle.
Yeah. But I think, as you said, millennials, I think we tried to, and I'm also part of it, of course, but what I look at it for myself is like, you want to try to do it all at once at times. And I think if you just are aware of it, and we all live, let's face it, if modern medicine continues, we will probably all live till 100 years. That's a long lifespan. That's a long life.
You still have a lot to do, right?
You can do everything you want.
Yes.
In that 100 years, just don't try to do it all at once, because then you don't do anything.
Yeah, it's true, and it's something. It's I have the same thing. So I like to have new ideas and new works, and then every time I find myself in a position where I'm overworked, and it's not only it's also in my private life. I find myself very overstressed, overworked, because I'm trying to do everything at once, and then nothing is being done properly. And I do know that focus on, like, it's better to do 4 things good than 10 things halfway. But it's something you need to remind yourself on every single day, otherwise there will be 10 project lying there.
Definitely, yeah, for sure. One final question. If you could have a drink or a dinner with anyone, dead or alive?
I would really want to speak with Musk himself.
With Musk himself?
With Musk himself. He's basically the Tony Stark of our age. It's not that I'm not the biggest fanboy, because primarily what he did, I don't like the fact that but it's a very American thing to do. They don't have any unions. All the factories didn't close down during the pandemic. People died because of it. So it's not all fun and games. And it's the same with Bezos, where you cannot go to the bathroom if you work there. I mean, it's awful. But what Musk did at the very, very beginning, before, and because he co-invented PayPal and sold it, so he had a couple million. So you would say, like, okay, that guy could live like a very pleasant life. And he was like, no, I have my own ideas. He did Tesla, but also did the Starlink, the SpaceX as well. And at one point, everything was going bad, and all his advisors said, like, just sell one or whatever, take your own wealth and get out. And what he did was he invested every penny that he had in those companies. Basically said that I went to public school, my children can do that as well. And I really believe in this. And that is something very inspiring for me, that you really believe. I mean, the very first rocket that he built it himself simply because he was like, I need to engineer this well, because if this explodes, everything is going to explode. He really does the designing. So he's a real engineer. I don't think he's the best businessman of all, but he's surrounded by good advisors. But what he did at that point in time, I find very inspiring, and that's something I want to live by as well. You can survive with because everything about our societal ways is earning more money, getting more whatever status. You don't need that much money to really have a happy life. And I'm privileged in the way that I'm a smart guy in one of the most wealthiest countries in the world. So I will always get a job, and it might not be the big paid job, but I can have a happy life. But what he did at that point, because let's be honest, if we all have a couple of millions on the line, I don't know.
It was 120 million, by the way.
20 minutes. I still don't know if I would do it, if it would have been me, right? So I really admire that he did that, and so that's why I would love to have dinner with that guy.
The previous person who said it, or two, when was sex? 2 episodes ago. 2 episodes ago, right? He has his personal phone number, and I sat dinner with him on 4 occasions. What? Yeah, he was one of the first customers of Tesla.
No way.
He's met him multiple times. He was telling stories. I don't know if it was during the recording or afterwards. Yeah,
During.
crazy stories. Like he bought one of the first Roadsters, and then his wife took it to go to the Netherlands, and they didn't have a charging plug, and then he could call like the customer success guy from Tesla, which was the person who started the Apple shops for Apple.
Yeah.
And then he would explain it, and then a week later, his wife would drive back to the hotel for work. Plug would be there, and a big flower would arrive at their home to thank them for the real. And then they would have like gatherings, and Musk would invite like all Tesla Roadsters sold in Europe, and they would meet in Milan, and they would have dinner, and they would talk, and then he would say like, and then they would having dinner, and then he would be saying, yeah, and in 10 years I'm flying with my rocket to Mars, and everyone's like, yeah,
whatever, and
whatever,
we'll do it.
Whatever, Elon, okay, it's fine.
Wow.
Yeah, he was invited to the launch of the Model S, and he's there on the movie, apparently. I checked it. I could see him standing there. He was there with the launch of the first Model S and everything.
Wow.
Yeah, I understand. It's a very inspiring dude.
Yeah.
Never thought about starting your own business?
It's to be honest, it's a thought I have. Like one of the things that I really see and feel in the startup business is you have to have this technical genius and a commercial genius. That's, I think, the best success formula. Let's just use Wozniak. I mean, Wozniak did the designing of Apple, but it was commercialized by Jobs, right? And so that dynamic is very important. I had already like a couple of ideas that it was very idea. So it's TRL 1 and 2. That's the farthest I've been. And I really do know I'm not Wozniak. I'm not a detail guy. So the technical solution will never come from my side. I'm really good, or not really good, but I do think that I have some talent in commercializing, knowing what clients to have. But the thing that I also see is that the maturity level is also a very big success factor. So if people had already like 5, 10, maybe 15 years of experience in different kind of organizations, that's really an added value if you start your own. Of course, you have examples of people are just naturally born entrepreneurs and have multiple success. Of course, I'm not that person. That's very clear. For me, I'm not from an entrepreneurial family as well. So starting my own business has never been on my agenda. And it's only because now I do a lot with innovation, with freshly new startups, just as you, that I really felt like, maybe. But I also don't want to push myself that tomorrow I need to find a startup, and then in the next 10 years. As long as I still learn a lot, I think I'm good where I am, and I'm just very open to opportunities. And
have you heard what the average age is now of, I don't know if it was the average age of a general startup in Silicon Valley, or the average age of the people who started unicorns today? Have you heard, Ethan?
I haven't heard, but I would think simply because it's all digitalized, it's young, no?
42.
42?
It's becoming older and older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Precisely because what you said.
Yeah, nice. 45.
See? And what is it? Starting a business or unicorn?
Damn. And that's the age that they were at the beginning, at the starting.
Yeah, when they founded the business. It's just like you said, because the VC people who pour their millions into it, they are also more they're more at ease if it's someone who has 20 years of experience and has done crazy stuff inside an organization.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very normal. And we all have this idea because there was the social network that
yeah, exactly.
every unicorn is founded by a 16-year-old with a hoodie, but
it's not
in
like
reality, no, of course not.
It's also kind of what I felt and have seen so far, because the thing is, especially, okay, unicorns is a very
high.
That's a high standard, but you have multiple phases of a company, and that's simply being very successful as a company in the beginning is about the proposition. I'm very sure about that. It's about the proposition. Is the timing right? Is there a market for it? And then if you have the real validation in the market, then it really is becoming a part of operational excellence. The fact that you can build a machine that's very lean and mean and that can really scale up this product. And I think that's the success factor of really going from a scale up to the unicorn phase, but simply because you have to think ahead. Because when you're still a startup with let's say 10, 15, 20 people, you actually already have to implement all processes for the next phase and for the next phase and for the next phase. So you have to have this focus.
True. Every time you double in size, all processes need to be reworked apparently.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Anyway, Jona, it's 6:20 on a Friday evening.
Yes.
I think it's time we round this off and go for a beer, right? I would like to thank you very much for making time.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Okay, yeah. I think I found it a lot of fun. Hopefully the audience learned something while having some fun. And maybe we do a round 2 in the future.
Yeah, I would love that.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Bao Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe to our channel. If you're interested in Bao Living in our Smart Adaptable Module or SAM, go check out our website baoliving.com. If you want to stay up to date, you can best subscribe to our monthly newsletter on our website or follow us on all social media platforms where we're named @Bao Living.